What's up, guys? Today is day 76 on my journey to 2000, and I have 5 games to go over with you guys. And some of them were a little bit crazy. I don't know what that was. I'm just tired. But I need to watch out for knights. Okay, and you guys will see what I mean by that. But the first game here is also playing kind of fast. The first game just goes into this thing. I'm waiting for like these like gambits, but they're not coming. Well, that wouldn't have been a gambit. This gambit, right? I'm waiting for like a king's gambit or a queen's gambit to show off my knowledge and try to like counter it with the Albin counter gambit and the Falker counter gambit, I think it was. But that's not what happens. My opponent just, brings out pieces kind of normally, goes into this Vienna. It transposes to Vienna, and then they push the pawn forward. I bring the bishop out because I recognize this is kind of a Vienna type situation. He brings his knight out, and here I have no idea what we're into. It just looks like a basic type of game, very symmetrical. He brings his knight in, and I'm thinking this is not a threat. I could just castle out of it, which is what I do. My opponent castles, and I try to kick the knight out. Bring my bishop, I take, and the reason I take is so my knight can come in with some tempo against the queen. He moves the queen to the side, and here I kind of mess up. I don't see this bishop move. And the idea I was going for here, by the way, for those wondering why I would attack a bishop, is because after takes, my whole point was to try to divert the knight's attention away to try to get this fork and pick up the queen, which just wasn't possible in this way. Like, I thought something like this I could do. He could just go back, and now he just picked up a pawn, right? And if I try to push in, now he has this move, and it's just... apparently he could just counter it. Anyway, this is what ends up happening instead. He doesn't take my pawn, so now he does this, and I bring my knight. And the purpose of this move is that if he tries to... I calculate that if he comes here and attacks my knight, I just take his bishop. Because he can't take the knight, I'll pick up the bishop. And yeah, he could check me, but, it's... I'm up a piece. It's not looking good. So instead of that move, my opponent checks with his bishop, and I just take with the rook. If I take with the king, I just don't want to calculate it. It feels like his pieces could get into the position, but apparently this is still winning, but I just take with the rook, and he resigns. So very simple stuff. Second game is against the 1687, who's playing the Sicilian, which I tend to do pretty well at. And my queen has to come out pretty early on, which feels a little bit weird. This is not the Sicilian I'm really used to. I castle, and that kind of loses my advantage, and this is how the game progresses. And right away I push this pawn. Apparently this was the best idea, to maybe reroute the bishop. Again, I had this idea from reviewing a few master games. The bishop a lot of times comes to c2, it seems like. But instead I just go for this trade because I'm thinking, okay, if he takes, I'll take. And, maybe my bishop will be rerouted later, but it's an open area. There is no attack on my queen side, and it's looking good. He doesn't take. I don't really... I think maybe I saw this move. I don't know what I would have done here. Probably just take because the queen is defending my bishop. But he doesn't do that. He brings the knight to the center, so I take, bring my rook to the center, and this is kind of how the game progresses. The reason why I didn't take here, even though his knight is in the game, I considered it. I just thought it kind of connects his pawns and gives him the rook and the bishop kind of having more maneuverability. But apparently that was the best move. And then I close off the position, and the game becomes a little bit complex. Now, here is where my calculation is dumb. I calculate take. I need to get better at calculating. I calculate takes. I could take with the knight. If the bishop takes, I just take, and this is still defended, my knight from my queen, the queen takes back. So this is what I calculate. I calculate takes, and then, he could take if he wants, but I basically picked up a pawn at the end of that line. Apparently, if I take here, it's a blunder, and I tried to calculate this as well. I thought it's fine after this, but now the queen takes the bishop, and the difference in this scenario is I'm down a piece. So calculation is super complicated in my head, but the basic idea is that my opponent could divert my queen's attention away from the protection of the bishop. Or I guess I don't have enough protective eyes over the bishop because the knight gets taken, and the knight is one of the defenders, right? That's why taking with the knight is better, because I already have 2 defenders that can't be taken. For example, if the bishop takes here, I just take with the pawn. And even though it looks a little bit crazy, now everything's protected and I'm up a pawn. And my assumption is it would turn into something like this, trying to trade. He might be forced to. Well, actually, not necessarily. He could just push back. And I have to worry about this, but, you know, at least I'm a pawn up. Probably pretty even, right? Instead, I take with the bishop. He takes correctly. I take with my bishop, attacking his queen. And again, his best move is to take my bishop because the knight is protecting, right? A little bit confusing. He does that. Here, I move my bishop back. And the idea I basically have is I don't want to trade queens, and I don't want the queen to have access to this horizontal area. So I do that. He attacks with his bishop. I move it around. He just keeps attacking my queen, so I keep moving it around. And I'm hoping, if he didn't move his rook here, let's say he did some random move, I'm kind of hoping for a scenario where I can maybe even sack my rook to get this open file, or not file, open diagonal, and checkmate. Not necessarily in that way, but I'm thinking, oh, maybe that's a possibility later. He moves his rook there to stop that idea. Maybe he thought of the same thing. And I'm just like moving back and forth, trying not to trade queens. And finally, he makes a mistake. He makes a mistake because my rook is threatening to take. And the idea is if the queen moves aside, then I can move my rook targeting the queen, and now I'm threatening mate. So he has to stop mate. This doesn't stop mate because I just take. This doesn't stop mate because I just take, right? And if he tries to stop mate by blocking here, well, I just take. I'm threatening mate, but also, like, if I don't want to worry about stuff, I could even just take the queen. So this idea of opening up the file worked out to my advantage because my opponent took the pawn. And that's why you can't give up, right? You have to look for wins no matter what. So I get this mate. Pretty high opponent too. Not like high, I don't know if they were smoking, but like 1680 rating. This person also 1680. And they are outplaying me. I have to get better and recognize my mistakes, which we're going to go over, but I was hoping for this queen trade. So already on this move, I see that the pawn wants to come here. That's the idea. And I don't know the best move that I could respond with. So I think for some time, I think about this knight move, but I don't like the pawns going so far in. Like, I don't want to give him this center. I mean, this pawn is kind of, you know, weaker, but apparently this is my best move with the idea of maybe if takes, then I'm threatening this fork, right? So if he has to, you know, that's kind of interesting. I didn't really see that idea. I just did not see that idea. So instead, I push this pawn, and I have my knight coming out to attack his queen, and I kind of calculate that. But I don't really recognize that the bishop could pin my knight. So this is how the game progresses. We trade, you know, pretty even game. Now I'm up a pawn because of my bishop, and I'm playing super fast. And this is what I mean by knights. When you play super fast, at least for me, if I play super fast, I have to be really cognizant of where the knight goes. Knights, you can try to calculate. I calculated. I understood the idea that the knight and the bishop can work together. And I saw that as being really an annoying thing, but then my king could sidestep it. What I didn't recognize was that with this check, first of all, no, there's no first of all. I didn't recognize with this check I lose the bishop. That's the idea, and that's why this pawn move was just the wrong move. And back here, I had to bring the knight in like this. And actually, this makes a lot more sense too, because let's say he's attacking my bishop here for whatever reason. I'm not saying this is a good move, but this protects everything, right? Obviously, he could attack it, but I could just take it. He has doubled pawns. The idea is interesting. And now if he tries to do something like this, right? And he tries to check. He gets my bishop because he has 2 attackers. But let's assume, you know, if the rook wasn't there, if the rook was somewhere else, I don't know, then this idea no longer works. Because after taking, we just trade. Now, of course, my bishop was powerful, and that's why I shouldn't have just focused on attacking the knight. But that was a big mistake I made, and it was kind of sad, and it kind of loses me the game. And I recognize I'm losing, but I try to keep my rooks alive. I try to keep the attack alive. I try to bring my rooks to the 7th rank. and you know, go for this checkmate idea, but he just outplays me, doesn't let me do much. I trade rooks, I don't see any other way, and I resign. This game's against a 1600. And we go into this Rui Lopez Old Steinitz defense, which actually I've gone into a couple of games like this. Because when people attack the knight right away, you have to think about what if the knight gets taken, right? Then I'm going to lose the pawn. Which is why I tend to push my pawn forward. Because also, if they don't end up taking, I could bring my bishop to defend and keep my pawn structure kind of normal. Now, apparently, the computer says just develop the knight. And I guess the idea is that after taking, the queen can come in, and when the knight escapes, you come in with check. Which is an idea I feel like I've seen before. So this is something simple enough that I should have seen, right? Something like this, he can't castle anymore. I have this damaged pawn structure, but he can't castle. And the game continues. I don't do that. Actually, did they call that the Berlin defense? Okay, apparently that's the Rui Lopez Berlin defense. I don't know. I always push the pawn forward instead. Because, again, knights. Knights are my weakness. I get scared of, oh, I'm going to lose a pawn. I don't think it through. That I could, you know, attack and stuff. Anyway, so this is, I end up playing more passively. This is how the game comes forward. And I try to just break that, the pawns, because they're just taking too much space. I don't like that. Right away, I blitz out this move. You see how fast I'm playing, because I'm dumb. And I'm like, damn, that was not a good move. He could just take the pawn for free. And he does. And I try to, like, you know, do all this stuff. And finally, I get this moment, very interesting, where his bishop is hanging. And the best move is just to push backwards. And if you think I'm forking, I am. But he could ignore it. This is how the game could progress, very interestingly. And right away, he's threatening mate. Now you might think, oh, doesn't this stop mate? It only delays it. It doesn't stop it for long. So I'm forced to sacrifice my queen. Instead of all that, my opponent doesn't do that. My opponent gives up the bishop, not recognizing that move, which is fair. But I saw the weakness in my position. I got lucky, and I end up winning this game. Okay. Sicilian. I should feel good. I don't know why I trade the knight here. I just wanted to push his knight. And even here, I considered taking with the pawn because then he's forced backwards. But I took with my bishop for some reason. And I couldn't... I thought about this for like 10 seconds. I have to think more. I don't know why I was playing like this today. But I thought, okay. I just didn't see queen d4 for some reason. Oh, no. I think I saw it, but then I thought, okay, what happens after the pawn comes here? Apparently, I just come here because the pawn blocks the queen's view of my center pawn as well. Yeah, I just didn't see that. So instead, this is what happens, and I just blitz out this move because I expect the bishop to come out here. I just expect it. It looks like the best move. This was the best move, apparently, which is very clever, right? If you trade everything off, it's at least you survive. But I push the pawn, allowing him to take my rook, and I'm like, oh, please don't see it, please don't see it. And I think he spent like 30 seconds like, wow, that was a terrible move. After losing that game, I'm like, okay, I'm done. But I did reach a peak rating. I don't know how I keep going up in rating. My highest was 1647, now I'm 1639. My peak rating at the end of a day, so thanks for watching, guys. If you watched this far, say phone in the comments. Appreciate you, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.